today I'm going to talk about woke versus awake versus an awakening. On the surface, they sound like sort of three variations on the same word that all mean the same thing, but they actually, in practice, seem to mean something very different. The people who identify as either one of those first two, awake or woke, they don't see any similarities between each other. So what's going on, and how is an awakening different than that? First of all, they are the same thing. And whatever side of that you're on, you're right. You're right. Congratulations. You're right. You've identified that what you've been told your whole life isn't true. We start to wake up. We see that the world isn't the way we were told it was. And what do? We run our programs and we come to conclusions, ironically, the ones that keep us asleep, that keep us from seeing the actual truth. And that's, this channel's never about being a victim. It's always about understanding your power. But that's why it works. Because instead of actually waking up and seeing your true power, you basically just double down on your adversary. Oh, they are the problem. That other person who used their different programming to come up with a different conclusion of what's wrong. Since the 60s, and probably since way before that, but in the 60s it became so clear because of the Vietnam War and the music culture of the time and the hippie culture. Every generation goes through that phase from their teens to, somewhere in their 20s, depending on, and for some of them, they never let it go, but almost everybody goes through that phase where they start coming into the world and they start realizing there's a lot of things that they were told and taught that just fundamentally aren't true and they don't work. And they're going into this society that they really weren't even ever prepared for because they were told a lot of nice stories, but then they're presented with a world that's very cold and unforgiving and really every person for themselves. A joke that illustrates this really well is that when you're young and stupid, this is a paraphrase, but when you're young and stupid, you're a liberal or a progressive, but then you grow up and you become a conservative. Then you've realized how the world really works and you know what's actually important and you move on from all that naive altruism that you had in your young years. No, guys, no. Just read into that a little deeper. What are you really saying? You're saying that when I'm young and that I'm still in touch with myself and what's important and my heart, I care about other people and I want to make the world a better place for everyone. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to do it. But then, depending on how resilient you are, usually somewhere before you hit your 30s, you've given up and you're like, okay, I get it. It's everyone for themselves and I just got to hustle and grind. And yeah, you know what? Given the two options, all other things being equal, do the thing that's the nice thing. Be a good person. A wink. It'll probably help you out to be nice. Even that's transactional. You can be nice once in a while because it builds your brand. But really, at the end of the day, you're supposed to be looking out for number one. And many conversations that I had when I was deep into politics, that's what frustrated me, is how many people believe the reason we are currently in the pinnacle of all economic systems is because it taps into that fundamental truth of our greed. Personally, I don't believe that as a fundamental truth. If it was, we would never have the society that we do. It's not our greed that put us to the top of the food chain. It's that we learned to work together. And here's what's crazy. As we go further and further into these videos, I am going to talk about becoming more selfish. Because the real trick here, guys, is that if you were really selfish, you would look at it from a whole system point of view. You would understand that if you lived in a society where everybody was thriving, your life would be better. Even if a couple of the totems of your success were gone, i.e., maybe you didn't have as big of a house or as high end of a car, or for me, as many guitars. Maybe not. But your life would still be better if you lived in a community where everybody's standard of living was higher. You'd be safer. People would be happier. There would just be more abundance all around you. Guys, we can't all build our own society individually with our own little in-group fighting against the other in-groups. That only is useful under the lie of a lack mentality, of a scarcity model, which is not the reality we're in. And that's why the culture war has become so ridiculous. Because now we live in a time where everything is documented. Now that'll become a little more difficult later with AI video and stuff, but right now everything is documented, so we have to work a little harder to keep some of these lies going because we see all the players constantly contradict each other. Isn't it amazing how the priorities are so different when a new administration comes into political power? All the things that were fires 3 months ago are all of a sudden, oh, that's not really even that important anymore. Interesting, isn't it? I'm proposing that this whole go right or go left, go conservative, go liberal, this is a paradigm we outgrew a long time ago. In this new post-scarcity world that we're moving towards, and even way before that, it didn't work. It was always sort of a lie. It makes no sense. And we're seeing it all the time in that the sides are becoming so much more hard to follow because they combine a lot of people that actually don't belong in the same team, or they alienate people that should be on the same team with you. This is something I've been noticing for a long time. A lot of these memes that come up that are designed to divide us, I'm not even really sure which side is putting them out a lot of the time. They're getting more and more vague. Because remember, their only job is to put us into fear mode and to put us into fight or flight so we make bad decisions and give our power away and get in fear so we buy safety. So since that's the goal, why waste our time trying to make content that only angers one side when we can anger both? And what I mean is I see a lot of these things talking about normies and sheep and people waking up and how many people that unfriended me are finally waking up to the fact that I was right. It's literally making both groups angry at the same time. Plus, you're getting the people that are against either one of those groups because they're like, there's another post from that group who's spreading all this hate that I don't like. You get 4 demographics with one vague post that really wasn't talking about anything. Right and left is out of date. So what's next? What's next is we have a heart and we have intuition and we know what's right or wrong. Guys, if you're an adult, you know right from wrong in your heart. You know when you're doing something you shouldn't do, and you know when you're doing something that you should do. So, the new politics should be your intuition versus your training and your programming. Or your heart versus your mind, or your love versus your fear. These should be the new sides. And you say, but Chris, nobody's going to pick the fear programming side over the love heart side. Well, first of all, yes, that's the point. That's the point. Why can't we have one side? Right? We're all heart-based, intuitive beings, so we could be on the same side. I don't know who made up the lie that we have to have opposition in order to come up with good ideas. When we're deciding something in our family, we don't ask somebody to be the asshole so we can come to a good decision. If everybody's trying to work for the best of all, we all get in there and we take each other's ideas and we try to come up with the best thing. But having said that, I'm also going to say I'm not so sure. Because of this demographic, and it's the one that's the most deceptive and the hardest to overcome, if you're that person, is the contrarian. The contrarian is the person who has a very, very good brain. They're very smart. And this brain of theirs, it's identified a lot of things other people don't see. And they've been right a lot of times. So they're all hail to their own intellect. And here's the thing about ego and ego mind identities. They love having an identity that can be put on a pedestal. And the contrarian identity, that's the one that's hardest to knock off that pedestal, because it's like, I'm the one that sees the truth. Yeah, all those people that aren't as smart as me, they think they know, but I really know. That's why all these conspiracy theories are always people filleting themselves about how smart they are and how all the sheep are stupid. I've been there. I am speaking from experience. I know. I went through my things about all the stuff. And, I knew it. I knew the names of the players and how they were tricking us and the way they were manipulating the facts. And I felt smart and I felt like I knew it all. But you know what I really was doing? I was keeping myself in fear. I was keeping myself in anger. I was keeping myself in victimhood. And now I realize almost none of those things ever have any actual control over you. And I'm going to do other videos about that because I know this one's going to be long. But no matter what it is that you're thinking right now, no, Chris, there's this thing or there's that thing in the world that need me paying attention, because if we all become like you and we put our head in the clouds and we think everything is kumbaya, which is not what I'm promoting, by the way, but I understand why you could think that, then all these things that are going to happen, I'm not going to let them happen on my watch. Guys, your watch doesn't have the power that you think it does. I'm going to say this pretty well every video. If you are in a position where you can do something to help, or you're in a position to change something where people are inflicting pain on others, I believe you morally should do those things. If you are in a position where you can make a difference. But if you think making a difference is just spewing off on social media, you're doing the opposite of making a difference. You're making the situation worse. You really are. Because every time you reach somebody that agrees with you, they just feel virtue signaled and proud of themselves that they're part of the team that's better than others. But if you're trying to change anybody's mind, you're just digging them in even further, because they don't care what you think. And the fact that you think they're wrong is just making them say, to hell with you, I'm going to believe it even more now. So what you're better off doing is just finding the ways you're similar to them and just finding more common ground and growing your community. And by community, I mean in any sense of that word, online, in real life, wherever that is. Having the better life, bringing the vibration of your community up, and then allowing people to see it from the higher point of view. And now finally, we're getting to the third term, an awakening. What is an awakening? Awakening is something that has a lot of mystical voodoo put around it, but it's really just seeing things from a higher perspective and continuing to understand that it's you that needs to do the work. It's you that needs to be the change, because you are the only thing you can change. And as we go, I'll talk more about how we create our reality. But like I always say, I'm not asking for any beliefs. So even if to you that just means I show up differently, people react differently, my life gets better, that's enough. That's enough of a way to understand this to get started. And the more you do that, the more you start finding the things that you do that get in your own way, and you change them, and things get better and better and better. And then you see with more clarity. And that's what an awakening is. Just more and more clarity you get. And I'll tell you how you know it's not an awakening, because you point out. Everything about an awakening is inside. Yes, you start noticing what other people do, but you also start to notice that you're doing it. And if you notice them doing it, it's actually just a way for you to find it in yourself. And then things just start changing and they snowball. And then all of that first stuff starts seeming so ridiculous to you, and you start moving on to a higher path. That's the one you want to be on. You want to be on the awakening path. The woke and the awake path are just pointing. They're just pointing fingers. It's the same thing. It's just a new treatment of the same old movie. We're about to move into a time that's going to be very complicated politically. And this is your opportunity to just step back and say, you guys play out that old movie, that old storyline, that same old remake. Ignore those storylines and start thinking in terms of heart, mind, love, fear. Start thinking in those ways. Left and right is a thing of the past. And someday, guys, we could get there because these guys are doing a great job of collapsing the system we have. I talk about the system collapsing a lot, and I never say it in a celebratory tone or as that's what I'm wishing for. It's just the facts, guys. Every empire crumbles, every society falls when it outgrows its usefulness and something better grows. I'm all for the soft landing. That's part of why I'm doing these videos. I want to, the more of us that can be awakened during this, the more of us can work towards making this a soft landing into the new paradigm. But in the new paradigm, imagine if there was no parties and we just voted in our community for the person that had the best heart, the person that volunteers all the time, the person who is at all those things when somebody in the community is in need. That's the first person that's going to, we all know somebody like that in our community. Imagine if they were the people that ran. And then we sent them to our capitals and they just went there to work with the other people with good hearts from their cities and their towns and their communities. And they all said, what can work for all of us together? With the slight bias for my own community, but understanding that the whole system needs to thrive. There's no reason we can't live in that system, guys, except for the fact that we're constantly being told there has to be a good guy and there has to be a bad guy. That is outdated thinking. Everybody at all times is doing what they think is best. In my next video, I'm going to go a lot further than this about how we all make our decisions from the same place. Anyway, there'll be lots more videos on all these topics going deeper. But let's imagine that, because our imagination is the first step towards new realities. I love you. Bye-bye.